Former David Pakman Show guest Tim Miller is involved in a show called The Circus on Showtime. He interviewed failed Republican Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake, who's also now running for Senate for the forthcoming show. This was filmed from a number of cameras, and it has now been released, and it is absolutely fascinating. Now, I want to remind everybody, Tim Miller is a Republican. He's a Republican of a different mold. He has relatively little in common with people like Donald Trump and Kari Lake, the election deniers, the conspiracy theorists, the populist authoritarians, etc. And the conversation is fascinating to see. It really is a good exchange, but it's a good exchange not so much because of the incredible points that Tim Miller is making, although he makes good points, but because of how this really shows that when you put forward to these MAGA types some really simple propositions that used to be uncontroversial for the former Republican Party, the party of 15, 20 years ago, there's no similarity. There's no similarity between these modern MAGA Republicans and the traditional Republicans. It's really a completely different animal. So let's take a look at this. This is very interesting to see, and we'll discuss various points here.
I'm not okay with that. I want you to be able to talk whatever you guys say on the circus. I want to be able to have conservative students not being shamed on.
Now, this is Kari Lake doing the thing about they're silencing the right. They're silencing the right in academia. They're silencing the right in social media. They're silencing the right in society, in the judicial system, etc. And Tim Miller points out there's actually an insane amount of speech for young people on the right.
This is like a golden age for conservative student speech. It's like, it's the best time ever. If you're a conservative student, you want to talk, you have huge platforms. I went to watch you speak at Turning Point USA. All these kids have huge audiences that come to see them, and that's great, that's fine. They're all speaking. Their speech isn't under threat. There weren't any cops coming to shut down the Turning Point USA thing. But here's the thing. You say you care about the fentanyl crisis and our kids.
I care deeply. Okay, right.
So if you care so deeply about this, couldn't you actually do something about it if you stopped the bullshit about the last election? If you had just acknowledged that Trump had lost and acknowledged that you had lost, you'd probably be in good shape to do something. You probably would have won your governor's race had you just talked about things people cared about instead of the election fraud. So sometimes don't you ever think to yourself, I wish I could just stop talking about this fake thing that Donald Trump made me make up so that I could actually talk about the stuff that's important? Because we agree about fentanyl. I agree. I wish we could deal with that.
I talked about that all the time at the campaign trail. I'm sorry you weren't with me. I'm sorry you weren't with me every step of the way. The people of Arizona understand me, and they know me, and they care about me, and I care about them. And I care about that. Getting them better, freeing the people who are held political prisoners. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I think you are still a little extreme. That's okay, though. It's good to see you again.
So Tim Miller is pointing out that had Kari Lake not adopted, and when I say adopted, I really do think it's a character. I mean, Kari Lake used to have completely different politics, and I don't know how much of this stuff she believes. You know, later we're going to have some examples of evidence that Trump does really believe some of the things he said. I don't have any evidence that Kari Lake believes this stuff. I think she just adopted this persona. It doesn't make it any less bad, but it just means it might make it worse because she knows she's lying. Tim Miller points out, if you just focused on stuff like fentanyl, if you focused on other things, instead of talking about how Trump actually won and how you actually won and talking about pardoning the January 6th rioters while claiming to be for law and order, if instead of that you talked about actual policy, you genuinely might have won in Arizona. And I think Tim Miller is right about that. Now, here, this gets weird. Kari Lake kind of strangely touches Tim.
We can keep doing this.
That's right. I'd love to.
This. We have some areas of agreement.
Love to.
We agree on the fentanyl thing.
And
then you get into the other stuff.
Oh,
but the other
sorry,
stuff is
I'm
what
not
you have to do. The other
I'm
stuff is
sorry,
what you have
I'm
to
not
do to
making
win.
you happy.
The other stuff is what I don't know why you're touching me. The other stuff is what you have
I
to
know.
do.
She just kind of weirdly touches him. It's a really weird moment.
The win is the thing. That's
Sorry,
the thing.
I'm a mom. I'm sorry, I'm a mom.
That's okay. I like to touch too, but
yeah.
you know, in an interview setting, it's a little uncomfortable.
I'm sorry that we don't agree on everything, but what I am not sorry about is that I think that I do believe that we can agree that we both love America.
We do. Well, I know that I love America. I do think that you were okay with Donald Trump trying to end the American experiment last time, so that makes me wonder how sincere your love is. But I do appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Good. Thank you for your time.
This is actually maybe the most critical moment, which is very often when they're backed against the wall, there's really no substantive argument remaining to be made. They will say to other Republicans, listen, we both love America. And it's usually a throwaway and you go, yes, 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 we both love America. But Tim actually has the right response, which is if you went out of your way, instead of talking about policy, to push a notion that would have allowed Donald Trump to become president, even though he didn't win, that might have allowed you to become governor of Arizona, Kari Lake, even though you didn't win. Do you really love America in the sense that you're against the democratic system that we have? How could you love America if that's the sort of thing that you push? Really well done by Tim Miller. I believe the full interview is going to be out this weekend, and we'll see if maybe next week we will talk about it. But when Tim is very well positioned. You don't have to agree on policy on everything with people like Tim Miller, Mitt Romney, etc. But they are very well positioned to at least get some of these MAGA Trumpists thinking, hey, is this actually the Republican Party that maybe I grew up with or that existed 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Has something gone completely off the rails with the Republican Party? I'm not saying it'll work. I'm not saying it'll save the party or bring them back to sanity. But it is these sorts of folks with really unblemished Republican credentials that maybe can get some of these voters thinking twice about their unflinching and blind support and loyalty to people like Kari Lake and Donald Trump. So we will see.